Hello, Kunal. How are you?
I'm doing well, Alhazen. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. When Sanjeev contacted me a few weeks ago about Fiji Haemophilia Foundation,
Right,
it was the first time I've heard of this foundation,
right,
and I did a bit of research on the condition. And
mm,
considering how serious this
right,
condition is, I was actually surprised that there's very little coverage on it, or very little
right.
light on it. But before we get to that, tell me a bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like?
So I was born in the Philotical Hospital, and was brought up in Tunalianandi, where I currently stay. And regarding my childhood, I had my ups and downs. Living with hemophilia, that in itself was a challenge. But I think the credit goes to my parents dealing with me when I was a child. Because I was sort of like a rebel. Whatever I was told that I cannot do, it just gives me the fire to prove them wrong that I can do it. Hemophilia itself had its moments. I would be hospitalized for weeks to up to months. There was a time, I think, when I was 8 years old, or 7 possibly. I was actually 7. I got injured at home and was hospitalized for 2 months at the Lotoka hospital. And then my condition got really worse, and there was some challenges with the hospital. And their treatment facilities. So they were required to urgently send me to CWM, where I was hospitalized for, I think, an additional 3 or 4 months. So that's basically been a summary of my childhood.
This message is shared in support of Fiji Cancer Society. Behind every cancer diagnosis in Fiji is a family fighting for hope. Your donations will help provide transport to treatment, care packs for patients, and support and comfort for caregivers. Together, we can turn compassion into action because your support is the lifeline they need. So whether you'd like to register, support, participate, get screened, or volunteer, the Fiji Cancer Society would love to hear from you. You can contact them on 332-4960 or 998-6981. That's 332-4960 or 998-6981. You can also visit their website at www.fijicancer.com.fj. Follow them on Facebook at Fiji Cancer Society or on Instagram, Fiji Cancer Society 20. The Fiji Cancer Society is open Monday to Thursday from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of those affected by cancer across Fiji. Now back to the episode. Are you in a constant state of pain because of this condition?
Yes. So basically, with hemophilia, almost all patients constantly deal with pain. There are 2 types of pain that we deal with. One is chronic, which basically means that we have no choice but to live it for the rest of our life. And this is attributed to the fact that up until the formation of Fiji Haemophilia Foundation, there was no modern medicine in this country. We were depending from, I would say, the age of dawn of hemophilia in Fiji. We were depending on outdated treatments. And when I formed Fiji Haemophilia Foundation, we were 75 years behind our neighbors, Australia and New Zealand, in the way that they were treating hemophilia compared to Fiji. So Just in the sense that because our bleeds were not treated on time, we ended up having deformities and joint diseases and conditions. And because of that, many of us live with chronic pain. And when we have an actual bleed, that's when we have to endure acute pain. And just to give you context, Alhazen, the pain that we actually feel, or the pain of a hemarthrosis, which is the medical term for internal joint bleeds, it is equivalent to a person breaking his or her bone. So the pain that someone would go through if they had just broken a bone, we endure that when we have an internal bleeding in our joint. And this is why emphasis is given to prioritize treatment first and medical investigation later. So I hope that answers the question.
And at this point in time, if you don't mind me asking, what's your pain level like? What are you experiencing at the moment?
So my day started with an elbow bleed. Currently I'm sitting in front of you with an internal bleeding in my right elbow. And because it is my dominant arm, I had to basically manage my day-to-day activities today with my left hand. So whether it be driving, eating, or basically doing anything. And the pain level of that right now, I would say it's around 6-7. But you wouldn't think that is true, because with hemophiliacs we are so used to pain, and our pain endurance, or rather tolerance level, is extremely high compared to someone who does not have hemophilia or lives with chronic pain or acute pain. So, and plus we have our coping mechanisms, whether it's to crack a joke or use humor to mask the pain. Many times at the hospital, what happens is that when a patient, including myself, this is actually a general statement. When we come to an ED, an emergency department, with an acute bleed, and we say, and the nurses during triage, when they ask, "Oh, what is your pain level?" Say somebody says it's 8, 9, 10. They would look at them and they're like, "Sure," even if they don't say it out loud. And this also creates a lot of misconception and a lot of stigma and judgment, unnecessary judgment, and sometimes it even causes a lot of misunderstanding between doctors and patients.
Because you are so used to the pain.
Right. I mean, we are used to it. Yeah. Whatever we are going through, this is not the first time. It's not our first rodeo, and we have dealt with probably worse pain. So this, compared to us, of course, the pain is there, and we are internally we are screaming. The agony is so bad, and we live with excruciating pain.
Has there ever been a time, even for a little bit, that you've never experienced pain?
I would say no, lately. When I say lately, I probably am referring to the past 3-4 years. As we grow older and due to lack of treatment, our joints are deteriorating. We are living with constant pain 24/7. This is something that even medical professionals sometimes find hard to believe. And this is why I say, unless and until somebody walks in our shoes, or as by one of my presentations, Haemophiliac, a day in the shoes of a hemophiliac, I had presented the type of pain that we actually endure, with bleed or without bleed. And this is something that is often unimaginable. And non-hemophilics or even medical professionals cannot actually understand or fully grasp the pain level that a hemophiliac with joint deformities or joint diseases have to live with in present and in future for the rest of their life.
Considering how much this condition restrains you physically, and maybe there are some things that you are unable to do, does that ever take a mental toll on you?
Of course, every day. So yeah, I mean, because of the pain and everything living with hemophilia, having to justify your pain in the hospital, or why you need pain relief, or why you even need to be treated. There has been times where doctors would say, oh, he looks fine. He doesn't seem to have a bleed, he's faking a bleed. And this has happened to me personally, where I would present myself in a hospital and a doctor who probably saw me scrolling my phone, or probably just sitting there and not screaming at the top of my lungs like someone else with an acute pain. He or she might feel, he looks normal to me. And that is where the World Federation of Haemophilia has been stressing that you need to treat, even if there is a suspicion of a bleed, investigation and medical tests or anything else needs to come later. This is also recommended, or rather endorsed by the World Health Organization, that when it comes to hemophilia, even on this subtle suspicion of a bleed, you need to treat the patient. And we as patients, I would say we know better when we have a bleed, as by researchers and stats. So hemophilics, when they get a bleed, and sometimes even before getting a bleed, they might be able to sense that they're about to get a bleed. It's what we call an aura. We get these tingly sensations in that specific joint, or a throbbing sensation, followed by, in no particular order, but pain, swelling. The area would be warm or hot to touch, and on top of that, there could be excruciating pain. So this is going out of answering your question, but when we get a bleed, the joint cavities that we have, it gets filled with blood, and that increases pressure on the joint, which causes swelling. So you can imagine when there's pressure building inside of you in a particular joint, and it causes swelling, which is only getting worse and increasing, that in itself will result in immense pain. Something that a non-hemophilic might not be able to understand or even imagine. And this is something we live with. I mean, if you look at my arm, it is swelling, it is bleeding, it is swelling, and it is now constricted. I cannot straighten it. And this is basically because of the internal bleeding that is ongoing right now.
So you are bleeding as we speak?
As we speak, I am bleeding internally in the joint.
And what do you do? What are your first few steps when you notice that you start bleeding, when you feel?
So the first step is what we call RICE: rest, ice, compress, and elevate. I tried icing it this morning, but it just made the pain worse. And then I had to do some errands, and then couldn't do anything else, even as basic as seeking treatment because of my commitment for today. And but yeah, for the first things that you need to do when you have a bleed, it is RICE, rest the joint, apply ice, so that it basically causes the veins to somehow expand, and the idea is to reduce the pain as well as the swelling. But on the contrary to that, there are some patients who have said, and I have experienced it myself, that many times icing does not work. Instead of helping ease the pain, it actually increases the pain. For me, warm water does the trick, warm or hot water. So yeah, and then compression. You need to compress that particular joint, and then elevate. So trying to lie down if possible is recommended, and to try to elevate that particular joint above your heart level, so that the frequency, or rather the intensity of the bleeding, is somewhat controlled, and the blood goes back to the heart instead of pooling in one place.
Is it ever tough on your loved ones?
Yes. I believe when I was younger and there was no support for parents with hemophilia, and lack of knowledge and information on the condition, and a lot of misinformation, whether it was from a medical professional or a loved one or someone in the family or a friend, they would just be open to anything that sounds good to them. And there has been many challenges, like taking a child with hemophilia to the hospital, especially if you're living in the interior. In my case, back when I was young, my father would be required to pay $50 one way from our house to the Philotical hospital. And there were many times when I would present myself at the hospital and we have a taxi waiting, or we had just hired a taxi that dropped us to the Philotical hospital. And instead of treating us, we were put through an unnecessary blood test, where they see your blood. They see your coagulation, and it's called APTT and FBC, full blood count, and cannot remember because of the pain the full form of APTT at this point. But it basically states the what is the control of bleeding of this particular patient against the machine. With severe hemophilia, a severe hemophilic's APTT would never be in the normal range, even if they are not bleeding, simply because the clotting factor that we require, we do not produce that enough. So in a severe hemophilic case, you can forget about it ever being normal, unless and until, of course, they've received adequate treatment that temporarily elevates or spikes their clotting factor in the body. So in many cases, we would be turned away from the hospital. We'd be given pain relief, and the doctors would be like, "Oh, you're fine. The APTT level is what we know is going to be deranged, but it's really not that bad. So you're not actually bleeding, even if we present ourselves with a bleed." And this has happened to my family multiple times, that they would take me even late at night to the hospital and would be turned back. And this was way back when FHF was not even
formed. So that's $100 trip.
$100 trip, yeah.
And at that time, did you realize that it was hemophilia, or?
Oh yeah, my parents knew that I had hemophilia. I was diagnosed with hemophilia. And yeah, they knew that I had this condition. The doctors knew I had the condition. But I wouldn't really blame the doctors at that point, because at that point they were neither trained regarding hemophilia specifically, and the fact that Fiji does not have a hematologist, a hemophilia specialist, and these are basically ED doctors that rely on tests. So I don't really blame them for whatever happened back then. It was simply lack of knowledge on their end, not because they didn't care, but because that's how the syllabus and whatever they were taught worked.
And so few people have it as well.
And yeah, exactly. Only a handful were known cases. I mean, now we are getting new patients reported to us or referred to us left, right, and center. But back then, even fewer would go to the hospital. A lot of the patients would rely on herbal medicine, or they just try anything that helps them at home, whether it was applying maybe some leaves that some traditional witch doctor or a traditional medicine man or person would recommend to them. And this was in my case as well. Or maybe some elderly would say, okay, if your joints are swelling, you need to do this with this leaf, apply it to the joint, or put oil on it and then heat it up and then apply to the joint and bandage it. And of course, not only does it deteriorates your joints, damages it, but it doesn't really help you with the bleed. So even though my parents, after getting tired financially and getting financially drained with the whole deal of going to the hospital and being told, oh, he doesn't have a bleed, we cannot really do anything, you need to go home, they started doing that to me. And this had happened in my childhood, in my teenage years, and early adult days as well. Simply when my father could not financially cope with the burden of taking me to the hospital. So I had no choice but to resort to whatever was available.
And for the viewers that haven't already heard, but Mr. Prasad is currently bleeding, and
Yes.
you know, it sounds so like the way I'm saying it. It just sounds
Right.
so it sounds shallow, but you know, I know that if I got a thorn in my finger,
Right.
I would feel very uneasy.
Right.
And you're bleeding as you're speaking, and you know, I don't mean to sound insensitive, but that is quite something.
Right. No, I mean, I appreciate your empathy on this, Mr. Ali, and just for the viewers' context, most of the time when we say we're bleeding, we're actually referring to internal bleedings, and by internal bleedings, I mean bleeding in the joint cavities. So it could be anywhere in your body where you have a joint. Could be the wrist, the elbow, the hip, the knee, the shoulders, the ankles, anything. And currently I'm having 2 joint bleeds, one in my elbow and one in my ankle. And on that, I have bleeds from last night that hasn't fully healed. So I am not too focused on that. I'm more focused on the acute bleeds that has happened. And yeah.
Tell me about the foundation. You know, you've had this condition for this many years. The inception of this foundation, was it because of your condition, or was it What is the reason behind it?
Okay, thank you for that question. It is an important one. So I had been writing to ministers, to governments, to Ministry of Health for as long as I can remember. Whether it was writing them a letter or sending them an email, telling them about my condition and what I'm going through. Back then, I was only familiar with two people with this condition, and that's of my two cousins that live with this condition. And then later on in my teenage years, I met the former oldest patient with hemophilia. And I knew that there were four of us,
And
at
how
least
old
in the
was he?
West. He unfortunately passed away, I believe, at the age of 70 or probably 70 something. Yeah. And how FHF came into existence is that I had been writing, I used to attend public speaking forums, and submitting proposals, and nothing would turn out of it, nothing concrete. And then I started writing online. I started using the internet and reaching out to the World Federation of Haemophilia, to any hemophilia organization that I would see in the US, New Zealand, Australia, Canada. And then it so happened that I was hospitalized for an ankle and hip bleed in 2017. This was, I believe, August. And I stumbled upon a hemophiliac on a hemophilia advocacy page on Facebook. And she was the first one to reply, and we started talking. She sent me a friend request, we started talking. And then she asked me where I was about. I told her I'm from Fiji, and she asked me what is the treatment situation there. When I mentioned that we only have cryo and FFP, she was shocked. Living in a country like the US, it's something that they cannot imagine. There's something that was banned in their country some 60 something years ago, still being used in a country like Fiji. And she got horrified because in the US they had something called the tainted blood era, where because of donated bloods, many people ended up having contracted blood-related diseases. So she was horrified when she heard that I was having severe allergy reactions to cryo and FFP. And then she said she has a close friend who runs an organization for hemophilics, and they help hemophilics worldwide. My apologies. So she referred me to Project Share, now known as Save One Life, and said that I need to get in touch with its founder and then President Lori Kelly. And she also reached out to her while she was overseas and told her that she just met a young man on Facebook who is hospitalized and has hemophilia. And the treatment for hemophilia in Fiji is only FFP and cryo, something that was banned many decades ago in their country. And so Lauren assured my friend Kelly that she would get in touch with me ASAP. And as soon as she came back to the US, she sent me a friend request and a message and asked me about my condition and if indeed FFP and cryo were the only things we were receiving. I mean, for someone living in the States, or even like in first world countries, it's really hard to believe the type of situations we go through in Fiji and many developing countries. And then I confirmed that indeed it's just cryo-NFFP that I'm being given, and this was in 2017. And she said that she heard that I get severe allergy reactions to it, and I confirmed that. And she said that she was willing to send me recombinant factor. This was something that I had researched many years ago, probably in the early 2010s, and knew that that was the modern medicine. That was what people in the first world countries were on and living a normal life if they were receiving it adequately. And so she said that she would be more than happy to send me a pilot donation just to test the waters and see whether custom is comfortable doing clearance with a new medication that had never been in the country, although it's legal to bring it in and use it. There had been challenges with the enforcements, the entities that do clearance. So she, dealing with such situations in other developing countries, she knew that there could be a possibility, and sending precious medications in large quantity would not be a risk that anyone would take. So she sent a small donation, and I received it on the 23rd of September 2017. And when I received the medications, I took it to my doctor, and I was referred to the intent teams, and we were just playing with it, trying to figure out what to do with this. I mean, the doctors, the registrars, they had a look and they were like, yeah, we've never seen this before, and it's way too precious for us to just play with it and see how we can mix this and give it to you. We need training in this, even with basic things like diluting the medication and injecting it safely. So I had to call Lori in the US, and it was probably 1-2 a.m. there, and she answered, and I said, this is the situation, I just received it and I'm grateful for it, but we don't know what to do. Even though it comes with instructions, we are still somewhat nervous about opening, basically breaking the seal on the vial. And she was like, oh, you don't really need to do much, just withdraw the sterile water that has come with it and inject it into the vial. The only two things that you need to remember that she told me was, number one, you should not shake the vial to dilute, which medical professionals are so used to with everything else. Everything else requires the doctors to shake the vial so that everything dilutes properly. With recombinant factors, they are so sensitive that if you shake the vial, it reduces the potency level. So
It does the opposite.
It does the opposite, yeah. So instead of shaking, she said you just need to swirl the vial. And as soon as it's transparent, it's good to go. You withdraw, and then the second thing you need to remember is that it's a slow push injection. So take your time with it, even if it takes 5 minutes to inject it, although it can be done within 1 minute. But since it's your first, she said, I recommend that you take 5 minutes with it. So that's what me and 2 medical students back then who were interns, that's what all 3 of us did. We swirled the vial, and I was injected the medication slowly. They took their time with it, looking at their watch and pushing the vials by taking intervals. And I had an ankle bleed that day, and I walked into the hospital with my crutches. And because the medication was given to me for the first time, they wanted to keep me under observation. And within 30 minutes, while the medical interns were sitting by my side, talking in general, while I was telling them about my ambition to start a non-profit for hemophiliacs, and we were basically talking about things. They started noticing that the swelling was reducing. It was taking time, but it was reducing. And I think within half an hour to an hour's time, the bleeding settled and the ankle swelling reduced. I was able to walk on my own. So yeah, and then the reason why I started FHF is that back then I knew that there were 4 people with this condition, including myself. And the second thing that I asked Lauren was, what about the others? I want to do something for them because my brother lost his life to hemophilia. So my parents lost their eldest child in 1993. And this was because of the fact that he did not receive any treatment. He basically bled out in the hospital bed.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And so, yeah, as a tribute to my brother and to ensure that nobody goes through what my brother did and many like him in the past, and what I went through growing up with hemophilia, I decided that I wanted to dedicate my life to helping others. And so, And so, yeah, I told Lauren what I wanted to do. I was thinking of starting a small group. And then she told me to dream big and said, the only way you can actually get the World Federation of Hemophilia's attention, your government's attention, if you form an organization and get it registered as a non-profit. So she offered to take me under her wings and mentor me, because I told her that I wasn't confident in myself that I could start an organization and to do what it takes to run an organization. So she took me under her wings and offered to mentor me and said that it's not only going to be me, I can find you more experienced hemophilics who can mentor you. And that's what she did. She gave me a homework. She asked me to find at least 5 more people with hemophilia, or at least 10 in general. And said as soon as I can do that, she promised to bring a team of experts, international hemophilia advocates, people with hemophilia, and hemophilia specialists, which are hematologists. And herself, she promised that she would come to Fiji the day that I officially launched the Fiji Haemophilia Foundation or do the inauguration. And so we were on with the deal. Under her guidance, I managed to create Fiji's first national hemophilia registry. And then my family and I, we started off. Wherever we would hear that somebody says that, okay, the symptoms that you're telling me of a hemophilia patient, we have seen maybe a neighbor or someone in our family going through this, that their joints swell for no reason, or if they cut themselves, they bleed excessively.
That's how you managed to find...
That's how we managed to first find others with hemophilia that had no voice, that didn't know each other. They were living a life of nothingness, I would say, where there was no support for them. It was just cryo and FFP and spending days to weeks to months in a hospital bed and living in pain and having no direction in life and no hope. There were mothers who were losing their sons, and there were families losing their brothers, their friends, their loved ones. And I'm not saying that we haven't lost hemophilics after starting FHF. We have lost, unfortunately, 3 people. 3. But yeah, compared to the mortality rate back then, we have managed to cut it down significantly now. But yeah, the entire purpose and the idea behind it was to pay tribute to my brother and to those that lost their life, and to the current generation and the coming generation. The idea was that I did not want them to go through what we went through. No family or no hemophiliac. And so that's how we started. I did my part of the deal and found, I think, around 5 or 6 people with hemophilia. And then showed to Lauren that I actually had a patient registry with the relevant information that was needed to create one. And this later came in handy. I mean, I was confused. Why are we asking these questions? Why are we creating this spreadsheet? And it made sense when we became part of the World Federation of Haemophilia and became its national member organization. So, except for the identities of the patients, the type of condition that they have, the severity level, the deformities, this information are shared with the World Federation of Haemophilia. It helps them in determining the treatment, the appropriate treatment for patients. So yeah, I did my part and Lauren did hers. In less than 4 or 5 months, FHF was on the ground and had basically gathered a handful of patients and was assisting them as well, all the way to Suva, from Ba to Suva. We were helping patients with their medications by giving them recombinant factors for free for their bleeds. And Lauren, in January of 2018, Lauren said, I think you're ready to start an organization. And she said, we're coming in February to help you along with my team to officially kick this off. So yeah, in February, her team and herself arrived in Fiji, and we shared our goals with the Ministry of Health and with the general public through mainstream media. And then we had our first medical symposium for medical professionals. So prior to this, there was no workshop, nothing of that sort, or training for medical professionals in this country on hemophilia, exclusively on hemophilia and bleeding disorders. So Fiji's first hemophilia symposium took place on the 17th of February 2018. We had almost up to 100 people, hemophiliacs and their families and medical professionals alike, at the Nadi Bay Hotel. And then we decided to do the inauguration on the 18th of February, which coincided with my father's birthday. So I just felt it was the right time and we were ready. So FHF came into existence. The patients got to nominate and vote their representatives as board of directors. They also got to choose their representatives for the Medical Advisory Committee, or MEC for short, which included medical professionals, mainly doctors, from all over Fiji, to be a part of it and to lead the organization from a medical perspective, while the board of directors were responsible for running the organization. And I got voted in as the inaugurating president of the organization, along with the 5 original team members. So that's basically how FHF came into existence.
Can I say one thing?
Mm-hmm.
I think your brother would have been proud of you.
Thank you.
I think he would have been really proud of you. And the amazing work that you're doing, and you're standing up for these people, this condition that most people don't even know about. I hope this foundation gets the recognition it deserves. And I want you to keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Sorry.
It's all right. It's okay.
On with the next question, please.
If there was one message you could leave for the viewers, maybe a misconception they have, maybe something you can tell them to address the things that you're standing for, what would it be?
Sure. I mean, before the existence of the Fiji Haemophilia Foundation, there were a lot of stigma associated around hemophilia and other bleeding disorders, and one of them included where people thought that it was contagious. Sitting next to a hemophiliac in school, or sharing a meal, or even being friends with a hemophiliac. And a lot of this was fueled by parents and teachers, but not like in the direct sense. They basically just told other children to stay away from a hemophiliac, that he has a medical condition, and if he gets injured or plays with you, he will get sick. So this is what I grew up with, and my classmates would think, okay, if the teachers are telling us to stay away from him and he will get sick if we do anything, and maybe it's contagious and we need to stay clear from him. In growing up, many people thought that hemophiliacs are just unfortunate people. They cannot do anything in life. They cannot complete school. Funny story, how I started my school was, back then it was compulsory to do kindergarten, and I could not go because my mom was a bit skeptical. And then she decided to send me to class 1 when I turned of that age. My head teacher initially was not comfortable with the idea of having a hemophiliac in school. So she recommended to my mom to take me to a special school. And my mom stood her ground that I do not need I don't have special needs. It's just that I have one special request, which is that nobody should hate my child. That's pretty much it. He is intellectually capable, and even though he did not go to kindergarten, she said you can ask him any questions. If he fails even one, I'll just get out of school and not bring him back. The teacher asked me to basically recite my 1, 2, 3s, and I had always been cocky, so I counted up to 100, or tried to count up till 100 in one breath, until she stopped me at 60 something. And then she asked me to say my ABCs, and in one breath I went from A to Z. And then I thought, oh, this is fun. Let me try to show her that I can say it backwards as well. And she said, yeah, I got the idea. Stop. And then she basically messed with my hair and said, you're going to class 1. And then she called my teacher and told her that I'll be joining the school and her class. But going back to your question, back then there was a lot of stigma, a lot of misconception. People, one of the major misconceptions that I would like to highlight here is that many parents or caretakers would think that hemophilia is a product of witchcraft, or anything but a genetic medical condition, a blood
Kala
disorder.
jadoo.
Kala jadoo. Kala jadoo, jadoo tona. So if you ask the Itoke or the Indo-Fijian community what they thought was the cause of hemophilia when you were young, or what your parents or grandparents were thinking, majority of them would say, oh, we or our parents or our elderlies would always talk about that it's black magic or a generational curse. And it was the same thing with my family, my relatives, and many other hemophilics that I've come across. So they would think of anything but consider it a medical condition, a genetic disorder. And of course, with that, there were a lot of misconceptions that these poor things would not be able to do anything with their life. Today, I would like to tell the viewers that we have a nurse with hemophilia in Fiji. Today, we have teachers with hemophilia in Fiji. We have people almost graduating high school or university tertiary institutes with hemophilia. And also there are a few that are already in the workforce. These are basically mild hemophilics that had been working even before the inception of Haemophilia Foundation. But the ones that I was emphasizing on now were severe hemophilics. Including myself, I will be graduating next year. And one of my cousins is graduating, I think, in September. So this is something that I usually say in my presentations in Fiji or overseas, is that whatever a normal person can do, a hemophilic can do it 10 times better bleeding. I mean, I'm not trying to be cocky here, as I was when I was a kid, but it is the reality. A example of that would be this morning when I woke up and saw that my right elbow was bleeding, my dominant arm. And I had to run a few errands and drop my niece and nephew to school. I drove them to school and back safely, and myself rather back safely, with my left arm, my hand. And this is something that we don't just start doing out of the blue. It's years of practice and experience. I can write with both my hands, and it's not a magical thing or some special ability that I had or have or was born with. It was simply because there had been times where I would get a bleed in my elbow or wrist or fingers during an exam, and then I had no other choice but to use the left hand to try to write. Then over time I just started writing like almost as good as I could with my dominant arm. And it's the same with anything: eating, sweeping the house, vacuuming, mopping, doing the dishes. So it's basically developed skills. And it's not just that, it's anything in general. Whatever a non-hemophilic can do, we are capable of doing it. Even not if it's not entirely 10 times better, but it is equivalent to whatever a non-hemophilic can do.
What are some of the challenges that the foundation is currently facing, maybe in terms of treatment locally compared to overseas, and in general, what are you guys facing right now?
One of them includes the core challenges that we have. Number one, it's inadequate supply of recombinant factors. Our main supplier is Save On Life, it's a small organization in the US, as I had mentioned previously, founded by my mentor, Lauren. So they too get challenges where they run out of stock, and so to restock our inventory when that happens and we place a new request with them, sometimes we need to wait until they get their stocks basically restocked in order to help us, and each requests are basically prioritized case by case. So there are many organizations depending on them, and so we don't get adequate supply. Number two challenge would be our medical infrastructure. We actually have submitted an MOU to the Ministry of Health, in which we have addressed all of the core challenges, including inadequate supply and the solution. So what I have been taught in the 8 years of running FHF by many of my mentors is that you shouldn't be giving out your problems unless and until you have solution. So in the MOU we have listed the problems, and I have also mentioned the solution. Regarding the infrastructure in overseas countries, they have specialized treatment centers. It's called HTC, which is short for Haemophilia Treatment Center. They exclusively have medical staff available 24/7 just to look after hemophilia cases. You get there, you get treated immediately, and then if needed they run tests, and in rare cases you are hospitalized or asked to come back. But in most cases patients do self-infusion at home where they treat themselves for their bleed. But if you cannot do that for some reason and you present yourself to that hospital, you get treated. I have proposed something similar in the MOU and have mentioned or rather requested at least 3 HTCs, Haemophilia Treatment Centers, to be available in Fiji. Now, knowing the status of our country and the financial situation of a small developing country like Fiji, it does not have to be some fancy hospital. It does not exclusively has to be something that only treats hemophilia. I have mentioned that it can just be a small room or even a small corner in AD. You know how we have like something, a corner for people with asthma, where if they get a asthma attack, they present themselves and they are treated immediately without question. They just go there and tell them the medical professionals that they have asthma, and immediately a doctor or a nurse runs to them. I mean, at least that's what I experience in my in the hospital in my hometown.
And
while waiting,
what would that room look like in the context of?
It just looks like any what I have proposed, just a corner in ED. It will just look like any ED setup, where there's just a table with maybe 2, 3, 4 seats in case we get number of hemophilic patients coming in at the same time, or rather in a short time. And the treatment in itself does not really take long. Most of the times we have the patients bring in the medications themselves that we provide to them free of cost. You just need to dilute the factor, which is just to mix it and then inject. It's a slow push injection, so you just need to put an IV line like so, and then just inject, and that's pretty much it. It takes less than 5 minutes to do that, or even 2 minutes. So this was more like a joke that we once did, me and some of my friends who were medical doctors. what we basically did is that I told them I was coming in with a bleed, and I said, let's see if we can have a competition as to who does it faster. So, of course, to not give full credit, it required 2 doctors to mix and one to infuse, and that was done in less than 2 minutes. I came in, they just one mixed the factor and one gave it administered it. But yeah, just going back to facts, it can be done in less than 5 minutes.
It's not a really complicated process.
It's not. There's only 2 things you need to remember. Number 1 is that you need to swirl the vial instead of shaking. So in the medical world, to dilute any medication, doctors and medical professionals are trained from the beginning that you need to rigorously shake the vial. With recombinant factors, that is not the case. It's the opposite. So shaking the vial reduces the potency level, and instead of shaking, you just swirl the vial, and it's a slow push injection. So you basically need to take your time, but it can be done under 1 minute or 30 seconds according to the patient's comfort level. So if he or she feels just fine with you taking your time but just injecting under 30 seconds, you're done. And you don't need to be hospitalized for weeks or months. And to touch back on your question, the other core challenges are financial struggles of the foundation. From 2018 up until 2023, my father used to foot the bill of the foundation. So whether it was to hire a taxi and take me to customs to pick up the medications that arrives, whether for me or the foundation, the cost of that was paid by my father. And he is not someone who is filthy rich. He was someone who worked on minimum wage. Now he's retired. And so that became a challenge for us. And along with that, we are required to pay tax on the medications that we receive. So these are, let me emphasize on it and give context, these are donated medications, life-saving medications. And we do not pay the donors anything to donate these medications to us. So there is no monetary exchange at all. And then I know that as a customs student, that the process is that in order to get clearance for anything imported into the country, you need certain things. One is evidence of purchase, which consists of the receipt payment or the invoice, along with other things. But what needs to be understood and what is also in the guideline is that if something that is a donation or a gift, there are declaration forms. There are declaration forms that a particular individual or an entity needs to fill and state that these actually did not cost a single thing. However, what I have noticed is that this is overlooked. We are demanded to provide a commercial invoice, which is impossible.
What's the reason for that?
It differs from each shipping company to the other. So a particular shipping company would ask you to provide a commercial invoice or state the reason for import and give a written reason why you cannot produce a commercial invoice. But the law is very simple. You need to give that particular individual or the entity a declaration form. And it doesn't need to be signed or witnessed by an attorney or a JP or whatever. It's basically an individual stating on record, on paper, that these are donated items and there has been no monetary exchange. And it is for whatever particular reason. that is for personal use, like in my case, or the foundation is importing these medications because it's not available in the country. The government does not provide these as treatments to the patients. So and then there are other other shipping companies that basically understand that Fiji Haemophilia Foundation is a medical non-profit for people with bleeding disorder, and they just ask you to, for formality reason only, just state whether it's a personal item or does it have a commercial reason for importing, and you just send via email that it's for personal use, and these are and just to clarify what the item is. So just to state in an email that it's a medication, life-saving medication for people with bleeding disorder, and that's pretty much it. Along with the question and answer of having financial issues, there are many. So not only paying for the transportation, but rather paying tax to the government. Tax are imposed either way, whether it's for personal use or for the foundation. Whatever you import into the country, since it's a donated item, customs puts a value of whatever they choose. Right now it's $100 Fijian, and on it we pay 12% tax, which goes out of my father's pocket or from the pocket of our Suva/Northern coordinator, Mr. Rao, who lives in the Central Division, looks after the patients living in the Central and Northern Division. So these are some of the challenges, and some of the other main challenges is the fact that doctors keep changing from hospital to hospital because of transfers or whatever reason.
The doctors that are used to these,
right, they get transferred, a new one comes in, or sometimes you're being seen by a new graduate, a junior MO or an intern, and this is the first time that they're seeing something like recombinant factor and know nothing about it because it's not something they are used to in medical schools. So that's where patient advocacy comes in play, and one of the things that the foundation does is provide educational and trainings to the patients as well. We teach them how to dilute the medications, we show it to them, or if they cannot be a part of the workshop, then when they come to pick up the medications, we advise them, and of course we have documents to log the administration of the medications. These are called treatment logs. That bears my number, and it has had my number since the start of FHF, and my email address, and I'm open to calls anytime. Sometimes I've received call in the early mornings, around say 2, 3, 4 a.m. and maybe someone any particular part of Fiji, a medical professional is seeing recombinant factor for the first time and asks me, and I am more than happy to walk them over, or the patients can do that for themselves with the doctors. But the challenge is that some medical professionals do not like to be told what to do, even if they don't have any idea what to do with it. And so that is one of the challenges that we have come across, but it's in small numbers that we receive such complaints, but it does happen. The major challenge that we have right now that has become quite an obstacle for the foundation is the MOU that is pending with the Ministry of Health. So as I had mentioned earlier, I gave them the problems that we're facing as well as the solution. Not just the HTC, but the problem of inadequate factors. The World Federation of Haemophilia is ready to send in factors. They would be happy to send it today in large quantities if the government gives us full concession on the importation of the medications. Of course, we are waiting for a formal MOU agreement to be signed between the Ministry of Health and the Fiji Haemophilia Foundation, which hasn't happened in the past 2 years since it got submitted. And in it, as I've mentioned or reiterated over multiple times, that it has the solutions mentioned in it. So yeah, you've got the problem of inadequate supply covered. You've got the problem of the HTC not being something fancy covered. You've got the solution to doctors getting trained professionally by experts in hemophilia, which are hematologists, who are basically specialized doctors to treat bleeding disorders. So these doctors, the World Federation of Hemophilia and our counterparts around the world are willing to send in specialists to come to Fiji on their own expense and train our doctors locally. Whether not just doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, and anywhere that needs training, they are willing to work with the government. And whatever gaps there are, the World Federation of Hemophilia is more than happy to handle that problem. So the World Federation of Hemophilia is extending a hand to help not only the government, but most of all the patients that are suffering.
It's just that we need to accept.
Exactly. We just need to accept that. We just need that MOU to be formalized. It just requires 2-3 people's signature. That's as simple as that. And
so it's just a signature that's left.
Right. Signatures that are pending on a piece of paper. And after that, for us, I would say it's too late. Our joints have already deteriorated. No amount of recombinant factor treatment, no matter how adequate it is, or even if we get prophylactic treatment, which basically means getting either low dose or sufficient dose of factor given to you on a daily basis, or at certain days, say 3 times in a week, or once in a week, or on a regular basis, is what is called a prophylactic treatment. Once the joints are damaged, it's irreversible. So it is too late for, I would say, my generation, the generation before us. But one of the main reasons why I founded FHF was to save the joints and everything that we've went through, to avoid the current generation, the future generation from experiencing that. And some of the other challenges that we face is that there is a lack of awareness, no matter how many times we try to do advocacy work. I would say mainly because it does not really capture the mainstream media's attention. And I think awareness is something that needs to be considered. And for that, we do need the Ministry of Health's help, or the help of corporate companies, if they can fund our workshops, our awareness programs, and our workshops. That we can have the idea, in a perfect world, we would be doing it in every part of Fiji. But in the real world, it all depends on any grant that we can receive from the World Federation. So we had been twinning with the New Zealand Haemophilia Foundation, now known as Haemophilia New Zealand. That was, I think, a 3 or 4 year agreement between the New Zealand counterparts of ours and the Fiji Haemophilia Foundation, which is part of a World Federation of Hemophilia's program. So the idea is to twin one organization to the other. One is the executive board, and one is the medical board, or a medical hospital with another medical hospital in a developed country. So unfortunately, we could not actually get things done with any medical facility to twin with the medical facility in Fiji, but that is the goal for another twinning program. There is, of course, a grace period that needs to be respected and to let other new organizations that have just formed or are still in its infant phase to twin with developed country organizations. So yeah, we have twinned our executive board and the organization with the executive board and organization of New Zealand, but the future goal is to twin maybe a hospital or a hemophilia treatment center if it is established by then, before the grace period. I think it's 1 or 2 years or maximum 3 years. I need to look into that again, but it's one of those 3 numbers, and after that you can reapply for a twinning, and this time it is it is a goal to basically twin a hospital in Fiji or a hemophilia treatment center with a established hemophilia treatment center or a hospital in New Zealand, or maybe with a hemophilia treatment center or a hospital in some other developed countries. So yeah, the opportunities are endless, and there are people, organizations from Australia, New Zealand, US, Canada, and many parts of this world that are willing to help and send in their medical professionals or any way that they can help not just the foundation but the government and the people of Fiji living with bleeding disorder.
And I do hope that this reaches the right ears.
Right.
Mr. Prasad, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Ali.
Hello, Sanjeev. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So tell me about yourself.
Well, my name is Sanjeev Kumar, and I am originally from Lautoka, and I grew up in an area called Vitongo in Lautoka, and yeah, so I still live there actually since the last 26 years, and so yeah, that's just my life. Yeah, in Lautoka, that's how it's been, and I am actually a hemophilic patient. I have hemophilia A severe, and I'm also executive member of the Fiji Haemophilia Foundation, looking after public relations.
For someone who has never heard of hemophilia, how would you define it? What exactly is hemophilia?
So hemophilia, so we call it a bleeding disorder. So what that essentially means is, so when an average person or a normal person who doesn't have hemophilia or any other bleeding disorder, if they get hurt or whether it's a cut, so their body reacts to that injury, and if there is bleeding, it stops the bleeding by forming a clot. So that's how you see if you get external bruises or injury, you get a blood clot forming on the skin, and if you have internal swelling, you feel there's swelling inside under the skin, and that's what a clot is basically. So with someone who has hemophilia, if such instances occur, what happens is that the bleeding takes way longer to form a clot, so the clot does not occur in time, and in a lot of cases, if the bleeding is severe, the clot does not form at all until it is treated. And normally the international standard treatment right now is factor 8 medication that is for hemophilia A, and factor 9 for hemophilia B, and so forth. So in Fiji, historically,
and what is factor 8?
Also, sorry, factor 8, yes. So factor 8 is a medication. So there are like clotting proteins in our body, right, which is produced by the liver. So factor 8, factor 9, and so forth, these are proteins that are produced in the body naturally. So if someone is diagnosed with a condition which is hemophilia, their body does not produce adequate amount of that clotting factor. So the factor VIII medication essentially replaces that clotting protein, factor VIII, or factor IX, whichever the condition is.
And what is it like for someone who has hemophilia? What's their day-to-day like? Is it, I spoke to Mr. Prasad earlier, and he mentioned that it's being in a constant state of pain. What does a day look like for someone with hemophilia?
Okay, so with personal experience, I'll start from, let's say, when it all began. So essentially, when you're growing up, when all your joints are fine, you start getting common symptoms, which are like swelling, or what we call internal bleeding inside joints. It can be elbows, knees. So elbows and knees are commonly the first joints to start bleeding, and then as you grow older, bleeding occurs in ankles and in hips as well. So at that time, when you're growing up, repeated bleeding inside the joints, it causes damages to the joint if left untreated, or if appropriate treatment is not given on time. And for myself personally, growing up, the primary care wasn't available in Fiji, so we were being treated with FFP, or cryoprecipitate, which is essentially derived from donated blood. So that required weeks of hospitalization. So at that time, when we didn't know much about hemophilia, and that FFP and cryoprecipitate being often being short in supply as well at the hospitals, patients in general, and like myself as well, whenever we had a symptom, we preferred to go to the hospital when the symptom was major, because let's say on a day-to-day life, on a daily basis, we would get bleedings, mild or moderate, in the joints, elbows, and sometimes we would choose to treat that at home and let your body take over and maybe heal naturally. Sometimes it used to work, sometimes it doesn't, you have to get hospitalized. So all these repeated bleedings inside the joints, it causes osteoarthritis. So on top of the pain that we experience when we are symptomatic, when we are not symptomatic, we also are in a constant pain due to osteoarthritis. So every day is a challenge. For example, my left knee and my right hip has severe osteoarthritis. It does not have full range of motion, both the joints. And one of my other target joint is my left shoulder. Although it still has a lot of the range of motion intact, but it is also a target joint. So when that happens, you often, life passes by you and you cannot participate, I could say. Your dreams, something as simple as attending school, it becomes a risk, and when you're dealing with these symptoms, and when treatment requires weeks of hospitalization, you miss out on a lot in life. Something simple as playing outside with other kids, something as crucial as education, and just life in general. So that's what it's like to have hemophilia.
And remember, just for the context of the viewers, I was stuck in the middle of the road, and then Mr. Kumar came and picked me up, and and he mentioned that he was bleeding.
Yes.
His shoulder, and like with Mr. Prasad said earlier, I personally cannot fathom that someone is bleeding out in front of me, and they're in immense pain, but I can't really tell. And I'm sure, and I'm not downplaying the pain, the severity of the pain, because I'm sure it's very painful. But I personally cannot fathom, and a lot of people that are watching cannot fathom. They're probably watching you, speaking very eloquently, very soft-spoken, but you must be in immense pain right now, and that's probably a misconception that a lot of people have. So if there was something that you could tell the Fijian audience to address them and tell them a misconception about this condition, or people that have this condition.
Okay, so the most immediate misconception that comes to mind is, so just because we hemophilics, we experience pain for a very long time, since childhood to now we're into our adulthood, is that when we present ourselves to the hospitals, and sometimes the triage nurses or the doctors, they have to use their judgment to label whether our case is an emergency or not. And just because our pain tolerance is perhaps not as same as a regular individual, we do not exhibit outside symptoms of being in pain, and they often mislabel our cases, or maybe it's not an emergency, or maybe if they're not aware of what hemophilia is, which is also a big issue, or even if they are aware, maybe the knowledge is not enough. So people usually see us from the outside and they think it's not a medical emergency, but it actually is. So right now, as I sit before you right now, I am bleeding internally from the left shoulder. If you ask me on my pain tolerance level, I would say it's a 4 out of 10. But I imagine, because I'm quite observant, I really notice how others react to pain. It could be that on a normal person's scale, this could be a 7 or an 8 out of 10. So yeah, I'm not sure if this is the case for every hemophilic, but a lot of those hemophilics who suffer from spontaneous bleeds inside the joints, they do share similar experiences, and we have to just adjust, we have to just adjust to life and live with the pain. Because if we just exhibit pain, the symptoms of pain, and just stop moving forward in life altogether, then that's just not an option, because pain is constantly there every day in one form or the other.
So in Fiji, what are some of the what's the diagnosis process? What is it like? Let's say someone suspects they have hemophilia, or a parent suspects their child has hemophilia, or maybe they don't know it's hemophilia. What's the diagnosis process like?
The actual recommended diagnosis that needs to be done in order to identify whether a patient has hemophilia or not, or to identify what type of hemophilia it is and what the severity level is, it's called factor assay testing, and it's not available in Fiji at the moment. I believe Aspen is pretty close in establishing such an infrastructure, but I'm not sure what the progress is like with that. So at the moment, what's happening is that Aspen Medical here in Lautoka, they are sending blood samples to New Zealand and to get the factor assay testing done, and that results come back to the doctor in charge and to the FHF medical chair, and then he gives the results to the respective patients and their families. So, outside of that, the factor ISS, so they did the normal blood testing with the APPT, where they check platelets level and whatnot, and all the other regular components of the blood, and they check for irregularities. So it's not 100% accurate in knowing, like I said, which condition it is, what kind of hemophilia, the severity level. And so right now, Aspen Medical is sending samples. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's from Lautoka Hospital. So, we encourage everyone suspected of hemophilia, and even if you have someone in your family with a bleeding disorder, get everyone tested if possible, because sometimes what happens if one of your brother has an apparent symptom of hemophilia, and let's say if you have siblings, other brothers, and their condition is not that apparent, that doesn't rule out that they are clear of hemophilia. They could have milder levels, which is not that apparent. So, what this testing also helps is that once we know the true nature of the condition that the patient has, the type, the severity level, we can help that patient accordingly. We can source the right medication for that patient. And one of the challenges for Fiji Haemophilia Foundation has been to get the patients to come to Lautoka to get the testing done. They come from all over Fiji. Times are hard, but we really encourage them to get the test done so that we can know how to help you. And the more people that get tested, the more data we have, the better we can help. So yeah, that's basically the reality of the testing process in Fiji.
What about for people in the north?
Oh, that's a good question. So for the people in the north, like I said, right now the only channel we have to get this test is Aspen Lautoka. So we have registered patients in the north, and we suspect in the interiors there could be many other patients that we do not know about. So as of now, they don't have any other means to get tested other than coming to Lautoka, and that's the best option we have at the moment. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of getting tested, because it really helps us to get the right help. It will also help the patient in understanding the nature of their condition as well.
At this point in time, what's something that this foundation needs most? If there was something that needs addressing, what would you say it is?
At this point in time, if we categorize all the priorities in order, I would say the MOU with the Ministry of Health, we need them on board, we really do, because what's being offered locally, firstly, is not enough. The cryos, they're perhaps as limited as the factor that we source. And if a patient who is a regular bleeder gets admitted, let's say 4 weeks in a row, and let's say cryos run out at the medical facility, let's say our stock of factors run out at the foundation, the patient is virtually left with no treatment plan, and we have witnessed this, with many of our patient members, and we have, first-hand experience of this as well. So, I believe, we as a nation, we're better than that, than just to leaving these people to die. Simple as that. It's a cruel. It sounds really bad when I put it like that, but it is the reality on the ground. And with no options available, something needs to be done. So the Fiji Haemophilia Foundation, they have the network, they have 8 years of experience on the ground, they have the data, and they have international network as well. So, I'm sure Kunaal discussed the MOU and its contents with you before me. So, if that is signed, the first most important part of how we can help people with hemophilia in Fiji or any bleeding disorder, the first most important part is done. Securing a stable supply of factor so that it can go around and everyone can benefit. We have about 35, 36 registered patients. I was talking to our Fiji Haemophilia Foundation medical chair just yesterday, and he shared with me the latest as of April, the data, the test factor assay testing data, and he said that hemophilia B is being identified now. We have 3 cases. So now we have to source factor 9 as well alongside factor 8. And now that these cases are confirmed, the demand is only growing.
Do you think there are a whole lot more cases, a whole lot more people that are undiagnosed at this point in time?
Oh yeah, definitely. So going back to the conversation I had with the medical chair, he said that he is estimating about 80 to 100 patients altogether, and we have only registered.
That's apart from the ones that you have.
Yeah, we have only registered 35. So, with hemophilia A, especially severe cases, it becomes quite apparent. But with other types of hemophilias B, C, where the symptoms are not that apparent, not that frequent, it's difficult to identify them, and it becomes difficult for the foundation as well to identify them because the network just isn't there, and the financial capacity is not there to going out to all the places in the country, working with especially working with the Ministry of Health. The network just isn't there at the moment. So it is something we could improve on as well moving forward.
What do you wish that and try not to direct this at any media organization, but generally media, what would you like them to cover regarding hemophilia?
Okay, that's a really good question actually. So since the establishment of the foundation, we've had very little media coverage, and whatever media coverage there has been, it did not deep dive into what hemophilia is on the daily lives of what hemophiliacs go through. So moving forward, I would like media to cover the daily lives of the people suffering with hemophilia, because just verbally hearing what they go through, maybe people, some people don't realize until they see it for themselves. And I can attest that it's gruesome, some of the things that hemophiliacs suffer with, whether it's external bleed, gum bleed, whether it's internal bleed. It's excruciating and it's gruesome. And the fact that treatment is available outside, and that only thing between that is a signature on a piece of paper is quite astonishing to me, that that's what's standing between receiving the adequate treatment that these people need to survive, not just to get better, but to survive. Because in the long run, even if you don't see mortality right now, in the long run, if you experience these symptoms as you grow older, statistics say that mortality rate with hemophilia, especially for non-severe cases, it's around 19%. So it will affect you more and more as you grow older. And right now, the patients in Fiji, we have a good mix of adults and children. And I would say there's more children under the age of 18 who have hemophilia. So although we could not save most of our joints, we could save those children that we have identified, and there's a lot of them. With the adequate treatment, we can save their joints and save their quality of life and their life expectancy as well.
Before we started the session, you mentioned that something as simple as standing up too quickly can cause internal bleeding. And I don't think a lot of people understand how serious that is.
Yeah, so just to give perspective, like when you hear about this condition, you might think, okay, maybe if you just try to be extra cautious, extra safe, maybe you'll be fine. Some people say, oh, just eat healthy, don't do this, don't do that, you'll be fine. It's not the case, unfortunately. The bleeds occur spontaneously, and especially if you have already damaged joints, which has osteoarthritis and whatnot. Something as simple as standing up in the wrong way. Well, standing up is something so simple, right? There's no wrong way of standing up, but in our context, if you stand up in the wrong way or maybe too quickly, you could get a bleed. That osteoarthritis will trigger something in that joint, and that oftentimes does result in a bleed. Or even if you're careful, you avoid all those instances, at night you sleep, you wake up the next morning, you end up with a bleed, you don't know how.
So you've been sleeping wrong.
So, yeah, you could say that.
I know I sometimes get like neck aches when I wake up, but this is probably maybe 100 times worse. Before we finish this session, if there was a message you can address anyone, maybe it's someone in a position of power, or it's the Fijian audience, or whoever you think is appropriate, if there was a message you can leave for them, and I'm more than honored to extend my platform and allow you to address that publicly, what would it be?
The message that I would give is that getting the adequate treatment to these people who deserve it is possible. If we come together, work together, we can change the lives of these people. If we act now, not only are we bettering the lives of the patients who are already there, we will also improve the lives of children, and actually, like I said before, we'll save their life as well. and we will have an established system of care for those patients who are yet to be identified, or maybe those patients, that could come up with hemophilia in the future. So although it's somewhat late for our joints, we could impact the lives of those who still have time on their side, who still have healthy joints on their side, and we can prevent that from further deteriorating. We can help children with hemophilia attend school regularly, because with proper treatment and especially preventative care, we can prevent the symptoms from occurring, and they can lead somewhat a normal life, very close to what normal life actually, I would say. And that is the goal, so that hemophilia does not become something that people are stigmatized with. I would use my example. Because of hemophilia, I started my education at the age of 15 in class 7. So some of the very first friends I made outside of my house were 11-year-olds at the age of 15. And for so many years, when I talked to people who didn't know me personally, they asked me, "Oh, what do you do? What class are you in?" I would just lie to them and say, okay, let's say if I was 16, I would say, oh, I'm in 11th grade. Because if I say, oh, 8th grade or year 9, then there's a whole lot of things to get into, so many questions, like a rabbit hole. I didn't want to get into that. So for many years I felt that stigma. But now that through the foundation, I met so many others like me. I feel like we have to be our voice, and we not only just our voice, be the voice of others. I've seen children who are unable to go to school, who are on wheelchairs, who haven't walked, in so many years. So my message is that the treatment is there. We have established the networks. Just give us a hand.
Mr. Kumar, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Mr. Ali. It's been a pleasure as all mine.
हाँ,
आपके नाम कौन सी है?
हमारा नाम दयाकरण है
दयाकरण
जी
है।
जी
ओके। एंड हेमोफीलिया आपके लड़का
हमार लड़का जब पैदा हुए तो उसके तो उसके तो कंडीशन ऐसे खराब होती 2000 में, तब डॉक्टर लोग फिर बताई नहीं, तो बोले इसके चेक करते गए तो गोड़ फूले लगा हाथ, तो बाद में पता लगा कि हीमोफीलिया है। तो फिर हम लोग उसके दवाई तो पता लगाया कि दवाई अवश्य से आवे, तो बोला दवाई इन्फ्यूज करा जाए, तब राइट हुए। तब आस्ते आस्ते उसके बहुत माइल्ड रहा ना, माइल्ड के मतलब जैसे बहुत हरदम हरदम नहीं हो जाता, तो एक दवाई छोड़ा 6 महीना चल जाता, तो कभी 1 साल चल जाए। तो फिर बाद में हम लोग कौन सी करा, उसके खाना वाना थोड़ा से परहेज करा, कोई चीज़ ऐसे दे तो एक्टिवेट हो जाए, बोला बहुत जल्दी हो जाए, तो हम लोग वो वाला खाना थोड़ा दूर करा आस्ते से। बट अभी भी है, कभी हो जाए तो 6 महीना में या 1 साल भी हो जाए तो मंगो दवाई चढ़ा है। तो उसके तो प्रॉब्लम कौन सी है, दवाई कभी कभी मिले नहीं, हम लोग के दवाई अवेलेबल नहीं रहे, तब तो जस्ती तकलीफ रहे। जब फुल जब है तो उसके पिराए लगे तकलीफ है, उसके मसाज नहीं सो करो कोई रकम से, और कोई आइडिया नहीं, पेनाडोल वगैरह छोटा मोटा डॉक्टर लोग अप्रूव करे, बट और कोई दवाई नहीं। तो वही हम लोग के है कि गवर्नमेंट में या कोई रकम से दवाई ज़्यादा सफिशिएंटली आए, प्रॉपर है, तो अच्छा रहे, सबके लिए फ़ायदा है।
कौन सी सबसे भारी आपके, कौन सी अभी स्ट्रगल है, कौन सी आप मानता है कि जैसे थोड़ा इजी हो आपके कुछ दिन?
ना मांगता है कि जैसे कोई रीडली अवेलेबल रहे, कोई चीज़ दवाई जैसे कब कब प्रॉब्लम में तब हम लोग गया सेम टाइम अवेलेबल रहा, तो हम लोग के भी इजी रहे कि लड़कन के लिए, बिकॉज और कोई ऑप्शन नहीं है, वो एक ही ऑप्शन है कि दवाई चढ़ाई पड़ी, नहीं तो कोई जंगली दवाई कोई रकम दवाई है नहीं ना कि कुछ करे से, तब वही एक अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ दवाई बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है कि सब टाइम रहे, पर्याप्त मात्रा में रहे, तो हम लोग क्वेश्चन बहुत है, वही हम लोग सोचता है कि फ्यूचर में कोई ऐसे रहे कि गवर्नमेंट के भी हेल्प मिले कोई रकम से, कि संस्था की इजी रहे मंगाए में सब चीज़।
और अभी कौन रकम है
जी?
अभी कौन रकम है?
अभी जैसे कुणाल के पास हम लोग जाता रहे, आवे टाइम से आवे जावे, नहीं तो हम लोग कुछ प्रॉब्लम हो जाए तो फिलोटिकल हॉस्पिटल में जाता, तो वो लोग सेम चीज़ नहीं रहे, थोड़ा डिफरेंट रहे, बट टाइम लगे राइट बोला, बट वहाँ ले जाके एडमिट करे पड़े, इतना दूर से जाओ, नेंडी हम लोग कुर्बुतों में रहता है, यहाँ से जाओ फिर नाओ, फिर बहुत प्रॉब्लम रहे ना, तो वही कारण कोई जगह रहे रीडली अवेलेबल रहे सब टाइम, तब इजी रहे हम लोग के भी, वो चीज़ सोचता है कि कोई रकम हेल्प मिले, सरकार से भी मिलते रहे तो अच्छा रहे।
और जब आपके पता चला रहा कि आपके लड़का के हेमोफीलिया है, शुरुआत में, तो उसमें आपके अब वो टाइम शुआरा कौन ची करे के वो टाइम कौन ची आप करा
ना, वो टाइम हम नहीं शुरा, बिकॉज उसके बारे में बहुत जनता नहीं रहा, और आस्ते आस्ते से उसके नॉलेज मिलते गए, तो जानते गए हम लोग, तो हम लोग जान गया कि अब जैसे कुछ गोल फूले लगे उसके, तब हम लोग जानते हैं कि इसके वाला फेक्टा खलास हुई लगा, तब दवाई लिए हम लोग दौड़ धूप करे पड़े, तो एटलीस्ट जानकारी में अब वही एक अपॉर्चुनिटी है कि दवाई मिले पर्याप्त मात्रा में हमेशा रहे, तब कभी प्रॉब्लम रहा तो हम लोग से वो चल दो ना, ईजी रहे, वो चीज़ हम लोग सोचता फ्यूचर में ऐसे कुछ सरकार की तरफ से भी मदद मिले सब रकम से, अच्छा रहे।
और अभी कोई समझ लो कोई माए बाप है जिसके लड़कन के हेमोफीलिया अभी पता चली से कि है, आप कौन सी उन लोगों के एडवाइस करेगा, कौन सी बताएगा कि कौन सी सके करे लोग?
वही जिसके हेमोफीलिया है, तुम एक दूसरे से संपर्क करो, बात करो, तब नॉलेज गई नहीं तो जाने की कौन सी करो, नहीं तो कभी कभी अचानक से आदमी बहुत नहीं जाने उसके बारे में डिटेल में, तो उल्टा दवाई दे दें तो उसके साइड इफेक्ट रहे, बहुत जस्ती डैमेज हो जाए सब चीज़, तब वही हम एडवाइस करता है सबके कि जिसके पता लगा कि हेमोफीलिया है, कि संस्था के बारे में जानो, संस्था में आओ, मिलो, बातचीत करो, कुणाल है और भी काफ़ी ढेर प्रेसिडेंट लोग और सब है, तो नॉलेज में जितना जस्ती नॉलेज नहीं उतना जैसे तुम राइट काम करेगा तो फायदा रही।
तो हम लोग इंटरव्यू खत्म करें इससे पहले आप मनता कोई मैसेज छोड़े हैं, कोई के क्वेश्चन सरकार के क्वेश्चन या मिनिस्ट्री में कोई के क्वेश्चन आप मनता कुछ एड्रेस करें?
हाँ, मंगता जैसे कभी कभी कोई श्योर नहीं रहे ना कि हमारे पास कौन बीमारी है, तो चेक करे डॉक्टर से प्रॉपर, तो डॉक्टर लोग बताइए प्रॉपर राइट चीज़ बता दी, तो कोई के बीमारी रहे बट जाने नहीं कौन सी है, जैसे हम लोग भी शुरू में नहीं जानता रहा ना, तो बाद में पता लगा, डॉक्टर लोग बताए नहीं इसमें हीमोफीलिया बीमारी है इसके, तब हम लोग जान पाए, उसके बारे में स्टडी करा, रिसर्च करा, उसके बारे में सब पता लगा, कुणाल के लिए भी गया, कहाँ सब पता लगाया, तब गुड, जितना जस्ती नॉलेज रही उतना अच्छा है। छोटा से कभी आदमी लोग जाने नहीं, फूल जाए हाथ गोड़ और फूल जाए अचानक से, तो नहीं जान पाए कि कौन जी, तो मसाज कर देंगे तो उसके साइड इफेक्ट हो जाए, बहुत ढेर डिसएडवांटेज रहे ना, तो वही मेन चीज़ है कि इसके बारे में जितना जस्ती जानकारी रहे, जितना नॉलेज रहे उतना अच्छा है।
और आपके पूरा अभी जितना दिन आप आपके लड़का के साथ है, लड़का के जो हेल्प रहा
वो 26 हुई है अभी, 2000 में बोर्न में, अभी 2026
जानो पोस्ट 2018।
वो तो उतना लगा ही रहा कि लड़का के बहुत थोड़ा मान रहा, कभी कभी तो बीमारी में ऐसे बहुत जस्ती रहे, तो एवरी वीक एवरी 2 वीक्स में दवाई चढ़ाते रहे, तो वो रकम से दवाई रियली अवेलेबल नहीं रहे, तो और सोफिस्टिकेटेड प्रॉब्लम होते जावे ना, तो लकी हम लोग के तो उतना नहीं है, फिर भी इट्स अ प्रॉब्लम। जैसे बगैर दवाई के तो कुछ हो ही नहीं, और कोई रकम दवाई नहीं। कोई बोले से जी दवाई, जंगली दवाई, सब साइड इफेक्ट है बहुत। तो इसमें ऐसे है, यू गट टू गो थ्रू वन चैनल रहते, ये दवाई चलाओ राइट में, राइट से करो, राइट काम करो। और संस्था में और हम संस्था ज्ञान दे, नॉलेज देवे कि कौन चीज़ राइट चीज़ खाओ, कौन चीज़ नहीं खाओ। इसमें बहुत ढेर चीज़ है इसमें ना, तो सब चीज़ फॉलो करो, अच्छा रहे। कभी कभी हम लोग कभी सेमिनार है, सेमिनार में बताया जाए कौन चीज़ करो, कौन चीज़ नहीं करो, वो सब चीज़ नॉलेज गेन करो। तो इसके बारे में और एक्सपोजर है, शायद गवर्नमेंट भी कोई एक लावे, कोई आदमी लोग तो वो लोग एक्सपोज करे, बड़ा बड़ा सेमिनार करे, तो उसमें बतावे दवाई के बारे, बीमारी के बारे में, तो अच्छा रहे।
अंकल बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया,
हाँ,
अपन टाइम दिया है।
अच्छा रहे, थैंक यू।
Well, how are you, Sarai?
I'm good.
Thank you for inviting us into your home, and I know
Okay.
the camera's turned on, so I have to do an introduction. But based on the very brief conversation that we've had, figured that there might be some struggles, some things that you were facing, as a mother, and dealing with a loved one, in this case your son, who has hemophilia. What's the biggest struggle that you're going through right now?
Biggest struggle I face is with his treatment. The treatment normally with factor 8. It's very hard, eh? It's very hard to get it nowadays because there's a special thing needed for the Fiji Haemophilia Foundation to fulfill in order for the government to give a green light. Green light. But we are so unfortunate. Lucky we have the Fiji Haemophilia Foundation with some supporters, and our Fiji Haemophilia Foundation president and some other officials who are there. They really help the foundation as a whole, bringing the money out from their own pocket to support the whole community, to support the whole hemophilia community. So, yeah, basically it's just a getting of hemophilia, because the problem with factor 8, not factor 8, the cryo that we go and receive from SPN. When we go there, we are needed to get our donors as well. Nowadays, we need to get donors in order for them to release the cryo.
Right. And is that a struggle? How many donors do you need?
Yeah,
usually?
it's a really that's really a struggle, because one, our hemophilia patient is sick. He has a sickness, and we are going to hospital, which really need to provide as the services for the hospital. But unlike with blood issues, we have to get donors. And when we get donors for us in our family, because in my dad was hemophilia, so all of my family, they know what to do. Whenever we get the donors, we have to provide food and transportation for them to and from.
It's quite expensive,
It's quite expensive, because we have to first thing we have to look for donors.
Right.
And most of the time, most of the family, our family members are donors. Because we have this sickness, and we can, like, normally after 6 months, then we can donate blood. We can donate like often with our previous admission. We admission 2 weeks prior to one another. So if we get 4 donors from our family and then another 4 same one, we can't. So we need to go out of our family from another relatives.
Because there's a time period.
Yeah, we need time to do that. Because, people nowadays, they are busy and they have schedule.
And if there's maybe one thing that you could change right now within the system, what would it be?
I would recommend and a kind request the government assistance. If the government can just give the green light on our MOU. Because our MOU is the only, we're just waiting for that MOU. If the MOU is we are given a green light for it, they are fortunate, because there's a difference between cryo and factor 8. Factor 8, they are given in a few minutes time, and cryo, they have to like complete the treatment for an hour. With my issue as a school teacher, I'm a school teacher by profession, and I have to be in school with my 40 students, and whenever my son is admitted, I don't allow anyone else to go, because mom is always be the best person to be with a kid.
Is it ever tough on you as a mother?
Yes, it's really tough. It's really tough. Being a mother and also your profession to become a teacher, and you have to be there 5 days in a week. We're so lucky that we are entitled for the leaves, 15 leaves. Lucky the hospital is giving us parent sick sheet. We are so lucky about that. So whenever so I would suggest and recommend and ask the government to please assist us in approving our MOU, because this sickness, they need factor 8. So I was telling you about with the factor 8, when he's given factor 8, it's the same time he's given. After 30 minutes, we come back home. Unlike cryo, we are there for 1 day, 2 days. We have to complete 2 vials. After 2 vials, then after that, then they'll check if the bleeding stops or the swelling go down. Then we are discharged.
Must take an emotional toll.
Oh man, it's emotional, overwhelming as well.
But you seem to be keeping strong.
Yeah, I have to
jolly.
be for my I have to be for my son.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy, and we are so fortunate to have the Fiji Haemophilia Foundation. They are very supportive.
There's probably other mothers there, or other parents in general who have children who might have hemophilia, and maybe they don't understand what their child is going through. They've recently just gotten them diagnosed, and the doctor said, "Oh, your child is hemophilia."
Oh man!
What's your advice to them?
My advice to all the parents or guardians that look after hemophilia patient: you need to be strong. Don't panic. Be strong. We have supporters. We have here families that are here for you, that can help you, even educate or share things about hemophilia. We are all here for you in regards with hemophilia. We are willing to help them, give them ideas on what to do.
Sort of a network and
community. We have a community, a building community. And it's Haemophiliac Foundation is our main. It's like Haemophiliac Foundation is the tree, and we are the branches.
When Sanjeev contacted me a few weeks ago, and I have to plead ignorance because I barely knew what hemophilia was. When I heard the word hemo, I remembered hemoglobin, and I was like, oh, it has to do with blood. But the fact that maybe someone in my position or other people, the average Fijian, they don't understand this, and it's such a serious thing. Your child is active, but at the back of your mind, you're also scared for you.
Yes, scared.
What's the I guess for you as a mother, when you see your child, what's the worst things that or maybe one of the worst things that you've experienced?
Bleeding. My son's bleeding, and the bruises that he has. So for me as a mom, I really need to take care of my son.
Right.
I really need to see wherever he is and what he does. It is very important to be alert with him. But unfortunately, also because he's still a kid, and I'm trying to tell him, you are different from other kids that are here. Not different in the way that you are. You are only different because the sickness that is with you, the other kids don't have. So with you, we need to really take good care of yourself. Whenever I tell you to sit here and don't go out and play with them, please do follow. But kids are kids, and we can't stop them. Even we can't even stop him every time. Even just yesterday, now we're having rugby competition for Nandi, and he was telling me, "Mommy, why am I not playing? My other friend, they are playing for under 9 this year.
Yeah.
He's in class 3. I said, one day you will play."
I'm guessing there must be a lot of misconceptions, a lot of maybe family members or friends, they hear about this, but they don't really understand it. What's the biggest misconception people have about this condition?
The biggest misconception is because they are just a normal kid, but little they know that sickness is there with them. They do normal things like other kids do. They play, they are much tougher than the normal kid. I always see my son. He's just normal, but sickness is there. And only when he goes beyond that, then he always get injured. And we started to see the bruises and the swelling.
Can I just say you'd make a great teacher?
Oh, thank you.
The way you explain these things.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Based on what I've seen today, based on the experiences of Mr. Prasad and Mr. Kumar, and seeing Kalepi, and also visiting an elderly gentleman who's also taking care of his son, I think it would, in one way, it's selfish of me to sort of take it upon myself and feel emotional about it, but I can understand, or barely understand, even 1%, but it's still hurtful, just to see the pain,
yes,
and suffering that you guys are going through. Yet, in that suffering, you still persevere.
Yes, we do.
And it is my hope that this reaches out to the right people. This touches the right, I guess, the people in positions of power that can actually make a change. And so it is my hope that this does make a difference.
Yes.
Madam, thank you for your time.
Vinaka vakalevu, Mr. Ali.
Thank you, Kalepi. You can go sleep now.
Vinaka.